How many of you were here last night to see Jane? Yay! And so there are some of you who have not seen it and perhaps don't know much about it. So the thing that you want us all to know about this movie before we go in is what?
Well, that it's just a movie about people and their struggles, and you know, like I said at the Q&A last night, it's really a movie about how different generations view war, how it manifests itself in families, and the psychology of the aftermath of war or tragedy, and the romanticism of that tragedy. And
what is it not about?
Well, it's robots.
And it's not about Jayne Mansfield's car.
It's absolutely not about Jayne Mansfield. Yeah.
So why is it called Jayne Mansfield's Car?
The title is a metaphor for the romanticism of tragedy and people's curiosity with other people's suffering. You know, she was a big movie star who was, they took her car around to different towns, you know, where you could pay 50 cents and look inside it. And in the movie, there's actually a little scene that's just like when I saw it in 1971 or 2, and they actually had a plastic dummy's head with a blonde wig on it in the floorboard of the car and everything else, with blood painted on the neck. And people just are so curious, and I think more so than ever now, people are interested in, you know, that type of thing. So it's really a metaphor for what the actual movie's about, which is the romanticism of tragedy and the effects of trauma and everything on people.
Where is that real car?
You know, some guy owns it now, I think maybe in Florida or Georgia or someplace like that. We used one that's just like it, and then it was the responsibility of our transportation department, the production designer, to wreck it exactly like it had been wrecked back in '67. And they did a great job on it. But that's just, like I said, one scene in the movie. That's just a thing that happened to me then, but it's really a symbolic thing, and the movie has nothing to do with Jayne Mansfield. It's just about me and those other crazy people.
It has a fantastic star-studded cast, beginning with Robert Duvall, who plays the father. And you have said that that character is patterned after your own father, right?
Yes.
In what way?
Well, men of that generation weren't very forthcoming with their emotions or their feelings, you know, so, I mean, I don't think my dad ever said he loved me or anything like that, and, well, that's sort of like, that's a mild version of it. Not only did he not say he loved me, I was usually dodging a shoe or something, but it was, I was kind of afraid of my father. He died when he was 46, and I was 17, and but he was a Korean War veteran in the Navy, and you know, I forgave him years later because I understand my father now. I mean, once you grow up and you get kids of your own and you look at the struggles of life. And by the way, speaking of the struggles of life, contrary to what you may read on people's creepy little, you know, face head or whatever, there are maybe some famous people, maybe some actors and musicians or writers, whatever they are, that have it made. I'm really not one of them. So, and you know, so anytime you tell a Canadian DJ to kiss your ass, or whatever, you end up, you know, being like, oh, this overprivileged guy who doesn't deserve whatever it is. It's like, people don't really understand, you know, that it's not like that. And just so, and so I think I understood my father mainly because I worked coming up. I worked at a sawmill and I hauled heavy equipment out of Houston and ran a backhoe, hauled hay for the time I was 14, and then went to LA and spent 10 years of horrible misery and practically living on the streets, you know, for several years. And I never was an actor who made $20 million a movie, and certainly not these days. I don't even make movies for $20 million unless they have a tights on. But anyway, so I think, you know, I had a really, you know, lower middle class upbringing, and that's being generous. And so even now, you know, having children and living in this day and age, it's hard, you know, and with the economy being bad and people are suffering. And I just think back on my dad in a time when he had way less than I do, and many of us do, you know. And I think I just finally understood him, and I you know, I love my dad. I get him now. And Duvall did an amazing job of playing a character that I based on my father. And Bobbie's been kind of fatherly to me over the years. He's been my mentor for over 2 decades, and so it was a natural thing, you know, doing this role with him, playing his son.
The movie JAYNE MANSFIELD'S CAR was directed by Billy Bob, and he's the co-writer on it with Tom Epperson, and he plays one of the sons named Skip. And Billy Bob, we have just a very little snippet of a clip, and so we'll ask our projectionist to show that clip, and then we'll continue the conversation.
Anyhow, this here's a Wildcat, United States Navy. That's what I flew in the war. Car name's a GTO, nickname Goat.
Why do you compare your cars to airplanes?
Oh, I cook up missions all over the county. Keeps my head in the clouds.
Okay, so that's Skip, and the young woman in the scene has an English accent. And how does that fit into the story?
Well, that actress is Frances O'Connor, who's a terrific actress. And the backdrop of this story is that years ago, we're a family from Alabama, Robert Duvall, and then the 3 sons, Kevin Bacon, Robert Patrick, and myself, and our sister, Catherine Lanasa, and the sister-in-law played by Shawnee Smith, and her brother-in-law played by Ron White, and a couple of grandkids, John Patrick Amadori and Marshall Allman. And so it's this crazy kind of family, and years ago our mother, who Duvall would never take her anywhere. Jim Caldwell and his character he wasn't interested in traveling, and she was a free-spirited woman, and he just wasn't like that. He wanted to stay on the ranch and not do anything else. Finally, she ended up going to England on her own, and he said he got a bait of England in World War I. He didn't want to ever go back there. So she went, and she meets a British man and falls in love with him, comes back to Alabama and divorces him. So for 20 years, our mother's been living with an English family, headed up by, and the actor is John Hurt, and then Ray Stevenson is the son, and then Frances O'Connor is the daughter. And so the mother dies, and her last wish is to be buried back in Alabama with her people. So that's how the movie takes off. And so there's a cultural clash between these British people and these people from Alabama who have never liked each other but are meeting for the first time. And I kind of, poor Skip is a guy who was kind of damaged in the war, and he'll basically talk to any woman that'll talk to him, and he's already hitting on the British girl who just got there.